I'm here to talk about the introduction chapter from Harcourt World History Social Studies textbook. It starts with a quote, "We are not makers of history, but we are made by history." All right, and it focuses on what is social studies. Social studies is 5 different areas: civics and government, history, economics, geography, and culture and society. First, it talks about why history matters. You relate events to where they are in time, and historians will look for links between the past and the present. Um, Historians also seek to find evidence and explain when the events took place and why they happened, or even what happened sometimes. You try to understand perspectives, and specifically the book talks about historical empathy and the ability to understand people of the past in terms of when and how they lived. And lastly, you draw conclusions, and that's where you analyze what happened, draw your conclusions about why or how it happened, and then that helps history not repeat itself moving forward. We don't want the horrible world wars to repeat themselves, so we try to learn from history. All right, next is why geography matters. So with geography, you can find answers to questions about Earth and the people who live on it, and that quote is found on page 6. There are 5 themes of geography. One is location. And location is either relative or absolute. So relative is when you say, my house is over near Weibo Park. Absolute would be if I gave you my exact address on terms of a local scale. And you can also do that on a worldwide scale. Place is where you describe the physical and human features. So if you describe the physical features of Miles City, you would talk about the rivers and the kind of climate. If you describe the human features, you would talk about the buildings we built and the roads. Human environment interactions, that's where you can modify or adapt to the environment. So modify means that we change the environment. Adapt means that we adapt to it. Regions, you can have similar or dissimilar areas. So we live in the Rocky Mountain region, edging towards the Great Plains. So the Rocky Mountain region has all sorts of mountains. The Great Plains are just vast fields of plains. And that's kind of how they're different. Or you think about a desert area, a jungle area, all that stuff. And then movement, which is kind of, you look at the cause and effects of when humans move throughout the world, what happens. So the essential elements of geography are the world in spatial terms, which is like a map, human systems, which one of the aspects is trade, places and regions, like I talked about above, environment and society, that's also very similar to human environment interactions, physical systems, like your landforms, and uses of geography, which is where you use geographic tools. All right, why do culture and society matter? So culture is the way of life, and society is a human group. And so culture is essentially a society's way of life. And your culture sets each society apart. And so not only does it teach you about your own heritage, but it can also teach you about people around the world. All right, why do civics and government matter? Government is the system of leaders and laws that help people live safely together. And that quote's from page 9. And civics is the study of citizenship, which is also from page 9. So we need to understand what's going on with our government and how we can be good citizens of them. And so that's why we study the 2 of those. If you didn't know what any of the laws were, you couldn't follow them. And then lastly, in this section, it talks about civic participation, which means that you're being involved with issues in the community, whether that's local in Miles City, a state, which, what can we do in Montana to help make Montana better? What can we do to help make the United States better? What can we do to make the world better? All right, and why do economics matter? So economy is the system of using resources to meet needs. So this is like when you make, buy, sell, or trade goods. So like if you make something, you go sell it in a store, or you buy it from the store, or you just trade with someone like, I like what you're doing, you like what we're doing, Economics is the study of the way goods, services, and wealth are produced. And those are both found on page 10. And lastly, and this is what our activity is going to be about, is the skill where we compare primary and secondary sources. So I'll explain more in person, but a primary source is records made by people who were there, and a secondary source is not a direct link, but instead it provides information by someone who wasn't there. Okay, so that's my summary of this chapter, and stay tuned for our activity, and make sure you pay attention for the quiz.